weeks. And it's been very exciting. And, you know, I didn't listen when people said, oh, you'll love being a Grammy, but it's amazing. So thank you. And I'll turn it over to Christina.
Thanks, Kim. My name's Christina Goodwin. I live in Burlington and I'm the executive director at Pine Forest Children's Center in Burlington, Vermont. I have been an early childhood educator for over 17 years, and most of my career has actually been at Pine Forest, where I've held almost every role imaginable there, including chef, which was outside my comfort zone. But I love early ed, and I have 2 young boys, which makes me even more passionate for this work and all the people who are involved in that field, our field. And fun fact, let's see. Well, I got to be a hockey mom for 1 week. My 5-year-old signed up for hockey, and now that's over for now. And he's devastated because he's like, I wear a mask all day. So he's sad, but my husband is rising to the occasion. He's also stir crazy from teleworking from home for the last 8 months. And so he's building a hockey rink in our backyard. So that's my fun fact, is that I get to be a hockey mom in my own yard soon. So there you go.
I love that story, Christina. Thank you. And I love the journey we're on with Kim and her granddaughter. So my fun fact, if you guys are here in the spring, the summer, the fall, I didn't get to go to my Motley Crue show down at Fenway. They've rescheduled it for next summer. It's not looking too good. I don't know. I'm pretty devastated as a leftover 80s hairband junkie that I'm not getting to see Motley Crue. I'm going to be optimistic though and try to power through. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint with you. Could you guys give me a thumbs up? Could you see it before? You could. Okay, because I got a message saying couldn't see it. Kim, let me know if you don't see it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just change it to present. Is that coming through for you guys?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Last thing we need is more tech issues. So tonight we're going to watch a video by our communications consultant, Katie Titterton. She does an amazing job. We're going to talk about professional identity. So if you were part of conversations prior to the shutdown, you would have been able to weigh in on what on earth we call ourselves. So Christina is going to talk us through that and why that's important. Then we're going to talk about the 3 designations, aligned pathways, and that phased-in implementation. And that again, you don't need a vocabulary lesson with. Both Kim and Christina will break that down for us into some really approachable language. Then we're going to break into small groups and we'll be able to have an opportunity to ask you what your thoughts are. And then we'll finish up with a survey. We're hoping by the end of tonight, you will actually know what it means when we say 3 designations and aligned preparation pathways. And I always think of, Kim used to do this part about designations in the summer where she's like, destinations, we're going to Hawaii. I wish that was it, but no, it's not. We're also going to talk about that phased in implementation and honoring the existing and future workforce and ways that you can continue to be engaged in the work. Now, part of what we're looking, or the entire project of what we're looking at, is becoming a fully recognized profession. That doesn't mean that you guys are not professionals. It doesn't mean that you don't act professional. What it means is our field is not a fully recognized profession like the nursing field or physical therapists or architects or the legal field. And so that's what we're focusing on. The aspects of a profession are really the common identity, having clear pathways for preparation, clear approaches to education, differentiated roles, and accountability. And when we think about accountability, we know in the medical field, if we do something we shouldn't, we can lose our license to practice. In the legal field, we can be disbarred and lose our ability to be an attorney. So these are all pieces of looking at how to advance the early childhood field to be fully recognized as a profession. I want to just throw a poll out for you guys, because normally we'd be sitting in a room together. I could see your faces, know if you're glazing over and saying, I have no idea what she's talking about. So I'm kind of wondering, have you had an opportunity to join us for professional development, or our PD1, which kind of went back in time to the history. It covered the beginnings of the project. And then also, have you ever had an opportunity to be part of a conversation with intent? And that should launch in front of you so you can go ahead and answer. Oh, great, it's working. I can see answers coming in. This is always really good for us to just know who our audience is. We have just a couple more, or maybe one more person to answer. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So did you get a chance to attend professional development session 1? Yes, 56%. So great, welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. We're going to pick up right where we left off. Again, for those of you that didn't get a chance to attend that, don't worry. We'll share with you the link to that video and you can go ahead and take a look at it. We'll talk a little bit further at the end how you might use it as a watch party with your staff or colleagues in a group. Then have you participated in a conversation with intent? Yes, for 63%. That's awesome. I think that's probably the highest number we've had so far, which is wonderful. So we are going to do that again tonight and you all will be the experts. And for those of you that haven't, don't stress, it's really easy. We're just going to give you an opportunity to answer a few questions and tell us what you think. So a quick project overview. This project began actually on the national level over 5 years ago, looking at what was involved in advancing as a fully recognized profession with the goal of asking for increased public investment. So Vermont began looking at it in 2017, wondering, okay, do we have any interest here in the state? So about 250 individual stakeholders came together and resoundingly, they all said, yes, I think we should really take a look at that. So out of that, year 1 of this project was born. Some of you may have been a part of that, where we came out to you and asked you, what's your will to engage in this project? Would you like to advance as a fully recognized profession? Resoundingly, 72% said yes. That was really exciting. We went all over the state, had conversations in person, met all sorts of great people, and really heard what the field wanted. It was 72% said yes, all in. 24% said, I think we should adopt some of these aspects, and only 4% said no. So that to us really said, okay, the field wants to see something change. So from that, because it's a field-driven project, year 2 was created. And again, you guys are all driving the bus on this. So year 2 started last year, prior to the pandemic in 2019, where we started talking about professional identity. And again, Christina will explain, why does it matter what our name is? Why does any of this even concern us? But we brought the information out to you, asked you all sorts of questions about what your thoughts were on roles and responsibility, who's in the field, who's in the profession. And we had to zig and zag really quickly through a shutdown. The task force managed to keep working even though the world was shut down. We quickly figured out how to bring together all day long meetings over Zoom, keeping them robust and dynamic and continuing to dig into the unifying framework. And then out of that was born year 3, where we began looking at the 3 designations aligned preparation pathways. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, the task force doesn't stop just because we're out in the field sharing this with you. So you all will have an opportunity to weigh in on your thoughts of that, but they're already working on professional compensation, which is usually everyone's favorite topic. Everyone's excited to hear, well, what's that going to mean? So when I say they've gone ahead, that doesn't mean that your thoughts and your opinions don't matter. That means they're continuing to dig into the work while they're waiting for your feedback. Almost becomes like a cycle where they send work out, they reflect on things, they move forward, it comes back, they reflect on the feedback. It just becomes this cycle that they keep doing until they're sure that they have buy-in from the field on what the decisions are going to be. I'm going to turn it over to Kim at this point, and she's going to begin walking through a little bit of the profession.
So just that statement there, the profession itself taking the lead. What does that really mean? You know, does it mean that we're going to be creating licensing regulations and determining the systems. No, what it really means is that we're defining who we are. What do we do? What are we going to be held accountable for? And what supports do we need for our success? I just want to read this one clip from the Power to the Professions Unifying Framework. And it says, one of the most significant results of shifting to a unified profession is that we're creating the space and the opportunity for the profession itself to take the lead in defining who early childhood educators are, what we do, what we will be held accountable for, and what supports are needed to ensure our success. So when I think of that, what I'm hearing them say is, for years and years, we have all been in the bus together along this journey, right? It's a shared journey of early childhood education. Many times we're enjoying where the journey is taking us. We're all in it together. We choose to be in the bus. But all of a sudden, the bus is pulled over to the side of the road and someone is saying to us, hey, do you want to drive? Now, I know, like, it kind of takes us aback a little, like, me drive? That's not what we've ever done before. But in reality, this opportunity for us to take the lead and determine who we are as early childhood professionals in the field. Next slide, please, Rachel. So what we're looking at is Power to the Professions recommendations. And as early childhood educators in Vermont, we are determining, will Vermont align with these? So the components that we're looking at in this process are the distinct professional identity, like Rachel mentioned. Tonight, we're talking about 3 designations and professional preparation pathways. And then going forward, we'll be looking at the recommendations for professional compensation, supportive infrastructure, and shared accountability. So on the next slide, I just want to wrap our heads around this idea of shared accountability a little bit more. So the idea of shared accountability is different from what many of us have ever experienced in the past. In the past, when expectations and educational requirements have increased, we've been accountable for them, but we haven't had the resources and supports necessarily. So that's the orange circle right down there, the professional accountability, the increase in educational requirements and expectations.
Hello, party.
Historically, the orange circle has felt like it's been spinning out there on its own, right? There we are.
Kim, you somehow got muted.
Can't hear Kim.
Well, I'm glad that So how much did you not hear? Did you hear me talking about the orange circle? Yes, okay, perfect. So let's talk about the blue circle. It hasn't always been firmly connected to the blue circle, the supports and the resources that help us to meet these increased needs and requirements. It also has not been connected to the significant public financing. As we all know, right, the green circle, the increased compensation that's actually needed to be able to move our profession forward and do the work that we need to do. Without these 3 colored circles being connected, we're trying to build the early childhood education system on the backs of the workforce without the accompanying supports and resources and public financing. As we, early childhood educators, more clearly define who we are, what we do, and what we will be held accountable for, we aim to engage the blue and the green circles too. So this visual prepared by the Power to the Profession is actually quite powerful because it envisions all 3 of these circles being connected and working together, thus the shared accountability. Next, I'm going to send it over to Christina, who is going to talk about professional identity.
Thanks, Kim. So after studying the recommendations from Power to the Profession and gathering input from the Vermont Early Childhood Education workforce, this past spring, the task force published a consensus document, which you can find on the Vermont AUIC website. If you didn't get a chance to read it, it came out around April or May. So right when we were all starting to be like, poised to reopen or sort of continuing to provide emergency care. So if you haven't read it, I would recommend going back and reviewing it. The consensus document was around professional identity, and with the answer very clearly that Vermont would choose to align with the Power to the Profession recommendation. So we're going to unpack what we decided a little bit tonight before we move into new content. So Power to the Profession recommended that we be called, the name of our profession be called Early Childhood Educators within the Early Childhood Educator field. And the Vermont Task Force, a lot of us felt like we already were calling ourselves Early Childhood Educators, and that adopting those terms over time and using them could be really beneficial statewide. We believed that having, and still do, that having one name would build a more cohesive profession and would enable public understanding of who we are. I'm going to say this word a billion times tonight, but fragmentation really hinders our ability as a profession to have a cohesive front, which the pandemic proved is really necessary for our long-term success and viability. We need people to understand who we are and what we're doing. So when we asked the task force, 90% of the people who responded to that survey and participated in Chapter 1 agreed with those names. So why does it matter? Well, having one name builds a cohesive profession and enhances public understanding of who we are and what we do. And it means that there's clarity that we're not babysitters and that we're in this together as a united front defined as a professional field. So fun fact, found out this morning that we have been in this pandemic for 246 days. So my challenge to all of you is to take and build a new habit. So generally research shows it takes about 18 to 254 days to build a new habit. So my challenge is to start changing the vernacular and the language with which you use to describe not only yourself to others, but how you describe your program and your school. So think about it. Try calling yourself an early childhood educator. I sent an email to the city of Burlington today and called my program an early childhood education program very clearly and intentionally. I do this all the time. We have a board member, I'm a nonprofit, we have a board member who consistently refers to us as a daycare, which just makes me cringe. And I have auto-corrected him for probably 4 years now. And recently at our past board meeting last week, he actually, without prompting, called us early childhood educators, and my heart melted. It's okay to make things clear, to advocate for yourself about who you want to be called, what you want to be called, and who you are and what you do. Take the opportunity to start changing it, because the more of us that change that script now, the more common and public understanding is going to become about what we are and who we are as a field. Next slide, please. So the next component to this was to discuss the roles and responsibilities. So here's how we decided to describe our profession in line with Power to the Profession. So we outlined that there was going to be 9 roles and responsibilities, that we as a profession would be providing developmentally appropriate experiences across all settings and all philosophies. This does not mean that everyone has to do the same thing at every early childhood program, but that we will be providing developmentally appropriate experiences across all settings and philosophies that will create safe, caring, healthy learning environments, that we will assess children's learning and development using tools that support the whole child, that will develop relationships with families and build communities, that we're going to advocate for children's needs in our schools and programs, in our own neighborhoods, our own towns, the state, and even nationally. And on the flip side of that, that we're also going to advocate for ourselves as a profession, right? We're really good about taking care of everybody else, but it's time to also make sure we're taking care of us. And so for number 6, my favorite tagline from this entire project thus far is "Do nothing about us without us." It's really about a grassroots effort. Number 7 is we will stay current with research and being up to date and always learning. And with that research comes reflective practice, that we're all continual learners. And 9, that we're all going to be held to a professional code of ethics that holds us as a field to the same standards. So the task force really felt like this resonated for us. It was inspiring and it spoke to the daily work we're doing and the children's needs in our state. It was cohesive across settings, and that's for all settings that support young children. So this could be in a Head Start program, this could be a family-based program, an early childhood education program, it could be a preschool at a public school. We felt like it really encapsulated the diversity in the state of Vermont in terms of setting and philosophy. So as a task force, we imagined pros and cons on the age range, which we're going to discuss in a minute, but 98% of the survey respondents, 98% of them agreed with this. And next slide, 84% of them agreed that the age range really should be birth through age 8, reflective of early childhood in the state of Vermont and sort of that brain science that we know. So why does it matter? Well, all of this defines our noble purpose. It includes the complexity of what we do, and it spans across all settings and age groups. It diminishes, wait for it, fragmentation, and it builds equity, and it brings respect for all. It's respect for all of us and the work we do. So the next slide shows a very colorful wheel that represents the workforce. So when we had workforce conversations about professional identity, we shared a version of this visual, and it's very beautiful, but it can be a little overwhelming at first because there's a lot going on. So today we're talking primarily about that orange burst out at the top, which is called Early Childhood Educator. And here it's shown into 3 designations, which we're going to go into more in depth at the end, towards the end of the session. Power to the Profession also mentions on either side of Early Childhood Educator, it might be kind of small for all of you, but that there are people who prepare early childhood educators and those who also provide instructional, it's a Monday, and pedagogical supervision as needing mastery in the same competencies as skills as early childhood educators. So that's why they're all sort of in that orange zone. Everyone else, so from yellow, green, blue, purple, and red, are part of the ECE field. And all those other colored circles, they do related work that relates to the abilities and the cohesion of the early childhood field. But they might not be prepared in the same way as an early childhood educator. So when we think about it, for example, nurses might be at the top. They might be the orange bubble. And a nurse has lots of skills. There's different levels of being a nurse, but they also rely on other people in a hospital, like a lab technician who might take the blood that a phlebotomist takes, and then they have to analyze it to then give nurses and doctors the information. So for us, it might also be that early childhood educators rely on speech and language pathologists who might be in the green bubbles, or they might rely on pediatricians to give them adequate health advice during a pandemic. So everyone else at the bottom of the circle is really supporting the field. Now, when we talk about the field, we also can talk about the opportunity to be in the profession. So the profession we speak of has nothing to do with program regulations, as programs will always be determined by state government. This is about early childhood educators, the people doing that work and implementing it every day. So there could be someone who offers care in their home, who's meeting all the state regs, but chooses to not be in the profession. However, there would be transparencies for families who are choosing to be either be in a credentialed program or a non-credentialed program. Just like as a business owner, you can determine if you want to hire a CPA to do your business taxes, or you want to use an online program to do it yourself. There's sort of choice in here. So being part of the profession means all early childhood educators in the profession have the appropriate credentials, they're going to abide by the same standards, and they're all going to follow the same roles and responsibilities we were outlining before. By reducing fragmentation, the profession can advocate effectively with state government in order to ensure that all early childhood educators are fairly compensated, supported, and that children and families have access to high quality care and education. So that brings us to the culmination. So Power to the Profession wanted the profession to include early childhood educators who have met the guidelines and qualifications established by the profession. They have a mastery of specialized knowledge, skills, and competencies, and are prepared to be held accountable to those standards that we were talking about in roles and responsibilities. The field, which would include those in other roles, may be valued partners, but are not in the profession, as well as those who choose not to meet the qualifications established by the profession. The task force felt like this model provided lots of clarity about who was in and who was out of the profession, who was a valued partner and who was part of the actual, early childhood profession. It acknowledged that some who work with young children may choose not to meet the guidelines established by the profession, and it recommends pathways to support individuals wanting to meet those guidelines. which we're going to talk about in a little bit. The profession applies across all settings and roles, and the roles and responsibilities would be put forth for everyone to know the parameters. 93% of survey respondents were all on board. So again, why does it matter? Well, we all know that our work experiences in early childhood education contain many facets and organizations that come with so many acronyms. I could spend 5 minutes just listing off the ones that come to mind from today, but I won't waste time. But we all know that it leads to fragmentation and confusion. So many of them begin with B's and C's that when we try to have a conversation, it gets very muddled and confusing. All of this leads to clarity. Defining as a profession and a field makes sense. It creates a clear identity and a boundary for the profession in a large, complex early childhood field that includes many different disciplines and functions. So to boil it all down, it really defines to the general public who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And professional identity overall matters because it lays the foundation for everything that comes next. This was the first area the task force had to tackle, because without it, looking at compensation and supports and resources and designations was going to be impossible. This really lays the foundation for everything that comes next. It's the starting point for all other pieces to start to build that definition. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kim so that she can start to talk about the next exciting pieces.
Thank you, Christina. So Christina's kind of given us that big view, and I'm just going to help bring it down a little bit. What we're looking at right now are the power to the profession components. I mentioned them before, and I'm going to hone in on 3 designations, and we will talk further about aligned professional preparation pathways. So next slide, please, Rachel. The power to the profession has recommended that we have these 3 professional designations. What you'll see is abbreviated here, but this stands for Early Childhood Educator 1, Early Childhood Educator 2, and Early Childhood Educator 3. And you will see that it really aligns with how we've been talking about the nursing profession, right? In the nursing profession, they have LNAs, who are entry level or have limited roles and responsibilities, but they work as part of a team with LPNs who may actually be supervising them. They also work as part of a team with RNs who would have the responsibility to lead and guide. So the Early Childhood Educator 1 and the Early Childhood Educator 2 and the Early Childhood Educator 3 work together as a team with one another supporting each other, having distinct roles and responsibilities and levels of skill. And if we think about it too, Early Childhood Educator 1s would typically be that entry-level person. And just like the LNAs, they tend to have a shorter time period to build their skills. They don't have as much college or as much professional growth and development. So besides having the fancy name, they also come with the levels of expertise, as is up there, but also there is, as their level of expertise and their skills and their knowledge and responsibilities, their compensation rises with that and their responsibility. So again, the 3 professional designations: Early Childhood Educator 1, Early Childhood Educator 2, and Early Childhood Educator 3. Next slide, please, Rachel. So the task force took a look at these recommendations, and they determined that they really like that the recommendations create a structure in which the confusion of labels and roles is reduced, right? Just simmered right down to 3 distinct and meaningful designations. We also like that all designations are prepared to work as a teaching team. That this isn't a hierarchy, but a team with unique roles and responsibilities to lead, to support, and to guide the practice of others. Lastly, we also really like that the individuals increase their depth and scope of their expertise and that compensation and responsibilities will increase regardless of the setting of their job. So remember, whether it's an early childhood educator 1, 2, or 3, this goes across all settings and age ranges. We also really love that these would be national portable credentials. Down here in Brattleboro, when I was hiring people, we had people coming from Massachusetts, we had people coming from New Hampshire, and it's not a one size fits all, right? They come in and they're like, I've got my resume and they look at all I've done. And we look at it, we say, oh, but that doesn't meet what we need here in Vermont. So to be able to have something that people can carry with them across state lines is a beautiful thing. We also really love that there was clear pathways for career growth. That in fact, the early childhood educator 1, 2, and 3 have a stacked preparation pathway so that everyone knows where they're going and how to get there. We also love the built-in supports to ensure true choice, right? To make sure that within the profession, anyone, whether it's a family child care provider or a teacher in a public pre-K, can choose to be in the profession with us if they want to. And this would be where I would tell you what the field said. So remember, Christina was kind of doing that. She was like, this is what we had, this is what we did. And then the field said, and now guess what? We don't know the answer right now. We're gathering data and you get to be part of that tonight. One day, your voice, your words, and your opinions could be up on this slide. So we look forward to finding out more from you. All right, before we move to the next section that talks about the professional preparation pathway, say that 10 times fast, we're going to just kind of get grounded and think about professional pathways that we've had. So we're going to do a little poll, and it's a lot of fun. I want you to think about this. What was your pathway like? These are the choices. So I'm going to illustrate them for you. Was your pathway like a marathon, right? That you trained for over time and it took a long time to get there, and you had cheering fans on the side and you get really tired, but then people would pump you up and you just kept going and you made it through the finish line, and maybe you got an award or you've displayed your diploma proudly on the wall. Yay. So that's one way that you might have gone through your preparation. Another option would be that you all packed up, you got into the vehicle of your journey, you had a GPS, you had snacks, maybe you even had a few buddies with you. The GPS led you exactly where you needed to go. It was smooth sailing, no problems, you didn't even run out of gas, right? There you were, boom, nailed it. Or many people have experienced this. More like wandering the back roads. And in Vermont, we know that the back roads kind of narrow down to a tractor trail, perhaps. But not only on a back road, but on a bike with a flat tire. So it's bumpy, it's rough, you're not really sure where you're going. For some reason, I always kind of picture it getting dark as you're going along. And maybe you just want to ditch the bike and turn around and run back home. Lastly, has or was your preparation experience been like you were lost in the woods? You don't know where the darn trail is, not really sure how you even got here. Will you have enough food to survive? And there's bears. It's scary. It doesn't feel like a safe place to be. So Rachel's going to pop those up and you're going to populate the journey. And let's take a look and see what who we have with us tonight and what your journey was like.
Kim, I definitely can relate to that. Backwoods and a tire that's flat. I don't even have my pump with me. I'm like popping off the trees, wondering what's happening. I came into this field with business degrees, definitely not education degrees.
Yeah. And I just saw a pop-up chat that they would like the option that it was a marathon, but occasionally got lost too. Yeah, I imagine we can have every variation under the sun.
Well,
So
there's
look
your
at that.
results. Wow.
Yeah, 25% had a marathon with cheering fans. That's great. I hope you had a really good time. And look at that, 38% made good time with GPS. That's terrific. And again, 25% wandering the backwoods on a bike with a flat tire. And lastly, it always breaks my heart when I see the folks out there who were lost in the woods with bears. I hope that you made it through, that you're not still in the thick of it. And if you are, keep up the good work. So next we're going to move on to, I'm going to send it back to Christina, and she's going to talk to us about these aligned professional preparation pathways.
Yeah. So we're now entering the part where the task force really needs you. We need your input and we need your feedback. While the task force worked on professional identity, it's important that you all know that the final consensus document was published with edits based on feedback directly from the field. We're now going to share the aligned preparation pathways, which allow all early childhood educators within the field to determine their own pathway and growth. So hopefully people aren't getting lost in the woods with bears. So the route to becoming an early childhood educator can often be confusing, costly, and time-consuming for many people to achieve. Offering training that does not lead to attainment of a valid ECE credential or degree, and training that's unaffordable does a huge injustice to our field. When we were talking about roles and responsibilities, reflective practice is one of those roles and responsibilities. And so it's so integral that we get this piece working and aligned and ready for Vermont so that everyone can be successful in this field. So the establishment of primary sets of pathways that are aligned to 3 designations, roles, responsibilities, and compensation for the profession is what Power to Profession is recommending. This will reduce fragmentation of the field while recognizing that there's lots of science still evolving about early learning that's equally complex for children who are birthed through age 8. The pathways bring recognition and respect for the importance of our daily work, and that's related to the field of complex brain growth. There's recommended from Power to Profession 4 primary pathways with different requirements, each requiring a completion of an organized program of study in early childhood education. So included in all of this, there has to be work to eliminate systemic barriers to higher education and to encourage innovative models that maintain a commitment to quality. This needs to be affordable and delivered through various modalities. With clear pathways, every early childhood educator who chooses to be part of the profession can ensure that their efforts and education will lead them in the right direction. Again, no flat tires, no getting lost with bears. Next slide, please. So the Vermont Task Force, when we looked at the Power to the Profession recommendations, Vermont thought we could align with the fact that the pathways are clear and that they would align into 3 distinct designations. I want to go to Hawaii, apparently. I keep wanting to say destination. They build upon each other. There's no need to backtrack and start over again. There's no roadblocks. That each would lead to a valued credential or a degree, that they're based on neuroscience and that they're relevant and meaningful to everyone's daily practice, and that they're built on national standards and competencies so that an early childhood educator in Colorado could easily move to Vermont and not have to do tons of coursework over again or do more testing and all of that kind of stuff. This is an opportunity, we feel, for our field to mold itself into what we envision in the long run. So again, we don't know yet because we're asking you. That's why we want your opinions. We really want to ensure that there's clarity around early childhood education and that there's a way for teachers or for early childhood educators to demonstrate their knowledge, to advocate as respected educators, and to have a skill set that translates nationwide. Really, all of this matters because of all those things. It reduces fragmentation, it brings us respect, and that this is really a grassroots effort. It all requires your insights, ideas, and constructive feedback. Therefore, after this session, when you get that survey, please take your chance to weigh in. So Before we move on to the next slide, I really want you all to take a moment and think into the future. Let's say it's 2025. We all know that change is hard. We all know that we've been fraught with daily changes, weekly changes, new mandates, new updates. We know change is hard. But sometimes when we're presented with change, we immediately react in a personal way and spend too much time looking at how we would fit in rather than absorbing the information. And sometimes this can cloud our ability to be innovative. So I want you to keep in mind the motto thus far of this project: do nothing about us without us. That means that we cannot form a profession and a field overnight. This is not going into effect on January 1st, 2021. We need to spend the time together as a field to build a new system that allows for respect, recognition, and a clear definition of who we are. And as we talk about putting all of those blocks together, I challenge you to take the 30,000-foot view. Think about this from an aerial perspective. Maybe you just entered the field a few months ago. Welcome. And maybe you've been in this field for over 30 years. Kudos to you. You're a lifelong early childhood educator. I want you to use your personal experiences to think about this proposed system I'm about to share with you from a viewpoint of a system of us. Again, do nothing about us without us. This is a system for us in the future. Next slide, Rachel. So we're building a system for the future of current early childhood educators and all who will come after us. I want you to remember that this part, and I want you to remember that part of that as a self-definition is to identify what supports we need to ensure our success. So as Kim was mentioning, there are 3 designations: ECE1, ECE2, and ECE3. Each one deserves honor and celebration. Again, it's about teamwork and collaboration. This field needs each of these designations for success, as they cannot stand alone. Each one plays an integral role in classrooms, programs, and schools, and each one allows for collaboration, innovation, and growth. The aligned preparation pathways must be approved early childhood education programs and will be consistent nationwide to ensure early childhood educators can be held accountable. They will still allow for specialization in unique philosophies. So I could still go to UVM as a Reggio-inspired school, but the core part of my curriculum would be the same as somebody going to school in Oregon. So ECE1s would result in a certificate or a credential. That's what you would be striving to achieve to be an ECE1. ECE2s, you would be striving to get acquaintance of an associate's degree, and an ECE3, a bachelor's or master's degree. Remember, this is not starting in 2021. We're not asking everyone to have a PhD in 2 months. We're building a bridge to help every member of the early childhood profession reach their chosen benchmark. People can choose to be in this profession. They can choose to be on the sidelines and enter when they're ready. But really, our goal is to build a bridge where every member of the early childhood profession can reach their own chosen benchmark. The responsibilities vary. An ECE1 is a supporter in the classroom, and an ECE2 might be a lead, and an ECE3 might be someone who's guiding and overseeing ECE1s and 2s. Compensation increases as your credentials increase. So an ECE1 would be making less compensation than an ECE3, but within that, there's space to ensure that everyone has a livable wage. Remember, this is we, not me. The task force really wants your feedback about these pieces as we grapple with some of the components. There's lots of literature coming out right now about compensation, which is what we're exploring next, but we really need to unpack all of this and have your opinions and ideas to ensure that the pieces align with Vermont's needs and that we honor early childhood educators here in our state. So again, this is a lot to mull over, but think about it from a perspective of we, not me. Do nothing about us without us.
All right. So thank you, Christina. It's no surprise that our feelings about change might be shaped by our past experiences, right? Sometimes change has been really hard. One thing that I really appreciate about the Power to the Profession work is the acknowledgement of some of the changes, how some of the changes in the past have felt. So here is a quote from the Unifying framework, and I'm going to read it to you. We recognize that to date, when policymakers have increased accountability for educators by raising expectations and educational requirements, they have frequently done so without sufficiently attending or funding the necessary supports and increased compensation. Because of these policies and financing decisions, current and future educators have had to make decisions as well, including deciding to leave the field or not enter at all. I know a lot of people who chose not to enter, and that's a really unfortunate thing. Rachel, next slide, please. So Power to the Profession recommends phased-in implementation, and so that embraces our future workforce, right? Let's think about the people who are coming down the pike. It honors our existing workforce, those of us who have been doing this work for a long period of time, or maybe even a short period of time, and really acknowledges the serious challenges in accessing and attaining credentials. So Power to the Profession promises that they will advocate for funding for necessary supports, funding for increased compensation, and realistic timelines. Next page, please. So, boy, that looks funny. It looks like we missed a bullet. The task force response here is that we really appreciate the realistic timeline that looks at phasing in this implementation, right? So that people aren't left thinking, oh gosh, I have to do this tomorrow. Like Christina said, PhD in 2 months. Also the flexible ways for the existing workforce to demonstrate competencies. Vermont's already really a leader in a lot of these ways. We've got it going on. We have Teach, we have the apprenticeship, we have assessment of prior knowledge. We have ways that people can turn experience into credits. And so we're doing well there, but you know what? We thought of the other things. Why can't we think more, right? We also really like that they're promoting the state level supports for innovative practices. We like that they're defining supports and funding that's needed, right? Remember we talked about that first circle out there in the shared accountability that early childhood educators have just been spinning out there by themselves. The part of the audacious vision is that anyone wants to be an early childhood educator at any level has equitable access at affordable, high quality professional preparation. We love that they're looking at that and embracing all the relationships that we need to have with people. We need to be continuing to build trust. Next item, Rachel. We really like how they're using the metaphors to communicate. We like using metaphors to communicate as well. We've talked a lot about how this is building a bridge. And just like when there's a bridge project or a community revitalization project, there's always that picture of what it's going to look like, right? So everyone can look and see it and be like, that's what's coming next. And it's not just like, here we are and there's the picture, but there's a blueprint and there's a plan, right? When the bridges are torn down and built back up on the highway, we know for several months we're going to be going in the left lane, and then for several more months we'll go in the right lane, and everyone knows and they move along with it. So here we are again, survey respondents, when we're talking about a phased in implementation. This is where we will hear from you and you will tell us, what do you think? Should this be a phased in implementation? Do we want to be able to honor the existing workforce and the future workforce? So you'll have your opportunity to vector in soon enough. All right, next we have this wonderful video that Rachel is going to cue up for us.
So this video was put together by Katie Titterton, who handles all of the communication for this project. She's the mastermind behind the emails and the flyers and all the great videos that you all have had a chance to see. This one, She just finished late September, so it's pretty new, and you can find these on the VACI YouTube channel. And I'll make sure to send you guys all the links so you can see those, and we'll talk about them again later. This one, you might recognize some of the faces in this. They're members of the task force, and the task force is made up of folks just like you. They are actual childcare providers, site directors, family childcare providers. They work with children day in and day out, and they represent all the different types of settings we have, and they are representative of all over the state. So I'll go ahead and play this for you.
We've known for a long time that our system of early care and education isn't working. We know change is needed so that all children and families have equitable access to the highest quality early learning experiences. We recognize that those who work with young children must be valued, respected, and well compensated. At the national level, the Power to the Profession initiative envisions a future system in which each and every child, beginning at birth, has the opportunity to benefit from high-quality early childhood education delivered by an effective, diverse, well-prepared, and well-compensated workforce across all states and settings. According to Power to the Profession, these elements are necessary to build the public will to invest in early childhood education: significant workforce involvement, collaboration among national stakeholder groups, national scope, based on brain science, and consistent with components of other professions. In our state, the Vermont AEYC Task Force is engaging our workforce at every step as we explore Power to the Profession's unifying framework as a possible blueprint for creating a new system.
So, we are envisioning a different future, and we're building the bridge to get there.
When people build a real bridge, it doesn't just appear. You need architects to visualize it, and engineers to design it, and construction workers to build it.
You need time, supports, and investments.
And you need a temporary bridge to get people across in the meantime.
That's why the task force supports Power to the Profession's idea of phased-in implementation as we advance early childhood education as a recognized profession. We appreciate the commitment to honoring the existing and future workforce.
This project is led by a task force made up of people in the early childhood education workforce, like me. I'm the director of the Bennington Early Childhood Center.
I'm the director of early education for the Burlington School District.
I own and operate Imagination Island, a family childcare program in Milton.
I've worked in early childhood education throughout my career. Today, I'm a preschool teacher, and I'm on the faculty of the Community College of Vermont. Phased-in implementation keeps the bridge sturdy for us, and it makes the journey smoother for early childhood educators of the future.
Let's remember there's a scientific reason for why early education is so important. Early education is critical for healthy development. During their early years, children's brains form billions of brain connections. So, high-quality programs, led by caring educators trained in early childhood learning and brain development, create environments for imaginative play, discovery, problem-solving, and joy. This is a rich foundation for all the skills our children need to grow into socially and emotionally adept, curious, resilient people. Not just anyone can do the work that fulfills this noble purpose. It requires mastery of specialized skills and competencies. By ensuring we are all well prepared for our roles as leaders, supporters, and guiders, and by holding ourselves and each other accountable for ensuring key outcomes for young children, we can ensure quality and improve equity in our children's early learning experiences. In a future system where responsibilities and compensation increase as expertise increases, we can honor our existing workforce and embrace our future workforce. To do this, we need supportive, phased-in implementation.
It's time to start building that bridge our way.
Phased in with plenty of supports.
What are we building toward? Power to the Profession calls it our audacious vision for the profession of tomorrow. Here's what that looks like.
Every child birth through 8 across all settings is supported by early childhood educators with recognized early child degrees and credentials.
Early educators at all professional designations are valued, respected, and well compensated for the important roles they play.
Educators with lead responsibilities across settings and age bands are prepared at the Early Childhood Educator 3 designation.
Anyone who wants to become an early childhood educator at any designation has equitable access to affordable, high-quality professional preparation and development that supports them in developing the agreed-upon set of knowledge, skills, and competencies needed in any setting.
Early childhood educators at all designations are well compensated in accordance with the complex and demanding work that they perform.
Let's start building.
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 We've known for a long time that our system of early care.
Oops, I have the worst time coming back off of these videos, but doesn't she just do the most amazing job figuring out how to just find these beautiful images and just really presenting all the information in such a nice manner? It would take Kim and Christina and I days to come up with that and say it in just the right way that she does. So what we're going to prepare to do, or I'm going to, oops, hold on. I'm getting back there. I lost my my screen sharing there for just a moment. I'm going to turn it back over to Christina for just a couple minutes. And then after we hear from Christina, we will then work towards our breakout rooms.
So we know that there's going to be lots of questions. And again, change can be really exciting, but change can also make us really anxious. So the task force has done a lot of reading, discussion, processing, and examining to start to align this information for Vermont. Again, we're taking everything from the national power to the profession, finding ways to make it work for who we are as Vermont early childhood educators. And so when I often think about the complexities to this project as a task force member, sometimes it's really hard for me in my daily life as well to not be able to just solve it right away, to like know what the answer is going to be. And so something that I find really grounding is a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., which he once said, "Faith is taking the first step when you don't see the whole staircase." None of us really know how this whole project is going to unfold, and that's why we all need to contribute toward our future. And it's sort of what makes it exciting, right? So this is an opportunity for all of us as early childhood educators to define us. This is no one else telling us what to do, who to be, and what this will look like. This is about us defining ourselves. So when questions arise for you, please ask. While the task force represents a wide array of roles in early childhood education, we still need to hear from others' perspectives to ensure that we see this from all angles. And while there are going to be consensus documents, and there already is one about professional identity, we can still make edits over time. I often think of this process as sort of the cycle of inquiry, right? Like you observe, you make plans, you develop curriculum, you observe what's happening, you go back, you do it again. It follows that whole pattern. This is about ensuring that all the blocks we're using to build this project mesh well, that they link together like actual Legos, and that they have stability. So as the task force has worked over the past year, some questions keep coming up for us, like how would it work? And how does it fit into our current system? And here's what we've been working hard to think about is how does it fit? The charge of the task force is to remain at the conceptual level up here, to envision the future we want. And that's something that we need to remind and orient ourselves to every time we meet. If we get too stuck in what we'll need to do with our current system, we won't be able to stay focused on what the new system we're trying to build or create will actually look like. We're not solving our current issues. We're not solving the antiquated system of BFIS. That's not what we're doing. We're building a new system to support our profession and field. And so we also often ask, like, how would this even work? And when that question comes up, we always go back to the unifying framework. Did they think of this? Did they contemplate that? And if so, what did they say? And then we go from there to start to unpack and think about, again, how would this look for Vermont early childhood educators? Do we have time, Rachel, to answer some questions, or should we jump into our conversation?
Go ahead and you guys can do one or two.
Okay.
So Christina, there's
go
a
ahead.
burning question that people ask a lot.
Okay.
What is in it for me?
Oh, wow. For you or me, as an early childhood educator, there would be increased clarity, right? I would have a better concept of what my roles and responsibilities were to be in my classroom or in my program. I would also, there would be a fundamental shift from privately funded early childhood education on the backs of educators and out of the pockets of families to it being more of a publicly funded system. There would be increased compensation, which I think would really help to ensure that like my team of ECE 1, 2, and 3 educators were cohesive and that people wanted to stay in this field for the long term. So that would provide a lot of respect for our field, stability for families and children especially, so that there'd be less turnover. And I think it would really, again, give us that recognition and respect that we so rightly deserve as early childhood educators. Let's see, Kim. How would we even get all of this to work? Like, how is it even going to come together?
Well, you know what is awesome is that the Unifying framework provides a really broad roadmap. Like you mentioned, we can keep going back to that framework and looking at what did they think. As we're sitting here, Power to the Profession is still looking at what can be done on a national level. And they are working with lawmakers and policyholders and many other players to see where there can be tweaks to build this new system. In many ways, it comes down to that many hands make light work.
So true. So true.
Thank you, Kim and Christina. I'm going to go ahead and explain to all of you and remind some of you about a conversation with intent. This is where you have the opportunity, you have a seat at the table. That's what this session is right now, is your seat at the table. Everything you say and you share, we're going to record, and it goes into our documents, our online repository where we save everything, organize it, and then share it with the task force so they'll know exactly what you're thinking. The way a conversation with intent works is I'm going to break us into 3 separate rooms. And in each room, you'll have a facilitator. That person will ask you the 2 questions you see before you on the screen. What excites you and what concerns you about what you've heard tonight? The 3 designations with aligned preparation pathways. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have the breakout room feature, but I do. The other night, for some reason, I didn't, and Kim had to do it for me. So when we're in the breakout rooms, the way this works, normally we'd be in person and we'd sit in a circle, but that's a little hard to do in our virtual world. So you'll have the facilitator will ask all of you to sit quietly, and that person will call on you in the orders that you appear on their screen. And they'll ask you what excites you, what concerns you, and you'll have 1 to 2 minutes to share your thoughts. And that person will transcribe everything down. And then at the end of the session of going around, they'll report out to you the common themes they heard and any types of outliers. So just, and then we'll come back into the breakout rooms or we'll come back into the main room and I'll share a little bit more information with you. So have you all set up and broken out? Again, you'll have 2 questions. What excites you and what concerns you? You'll be asked those questions at the same time, so you'll only report out 1 time in this. If something pops into your head that is really exciting and you don't want to forget it, go ahead and just write it down on a piece of paper. That way we make sure everybody gets a chance to speak without being interrupted. So here we go. You should see an opportunity on the screen to join a room. If you haven't done that before, just go ahead and click join and it will take you off.
And now we can wait for everyone else to return with us, I guess. There they come.
Hi guys, looks like we made it back.
I wondered for a moment there. I was like, well, I'm still here in my same breakout room.
Did you guys get a chance to go through everything?
We did, and we had a chance to visit to boot.
Nice. How about you, Christina? Awesome. That's wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to share one more screen with you and talk to you about a few things, and then I'm going to also give you the survey. So tonight I'm going to challenge you. Hi to Reva's kitty. I'm going to challenge you guys.
Really like Zoom.
To answer the survey. So again, you have tonight a seat at the table, but another way to ensure your voice is heard is to answer this survey, because we actually do take the data right out of this, and this goes into our reports and it's given directly to the task force. So it's another chance for you to say something else that might pop up into your mind a little bit later, or just, oh, I hadn't thought of that till somebody else said it. So my challenge to you is, you guys are the third session in 7 days. And so my challenge to you is to have the highest response rate. So this is going to be an all-in thing, because our highest group so far is 91%. So it's all in, all hands on deck for you guys to win the self-proclaimed champions of survey answering. So
We'll
also
talk about you for sessions from now if you can beat this.
That's right. So the other thing is, how can you stay involved? How can you find out what's going on and learn more about this? So social media. VACE has a Facebook page. They also have a YouTube channel where you can find other videos that we watched tonight, the same one and others. You'll also find on the Let's Grow Kids page, they quite often put information up. And NACE, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, has a Facebook page, and you can find updates on the Power to the Profession work. So when I'm talking about Power to the Profession, you can also check out their website. This is an entire website dedicated to the national work. You can find the Unifying framework there. You can find an awesome 2-minute video that is so energizing. The VACE website also has tons of great information about Vermont's project, including blogs, updates, discussion drafts, consensus drafts, videos, flyers. There's tons and tons of great information there to answer questions you might have. The other thing is, I'd say, I would encourage you, continue to attend these professional development opportunities. We will be rolling out session number 3 after the new year. Session number 3 is going to focus specifically on compensation. That's everyone's favorite topic usually. So make sure, again, you join us. One thing I want to make sure to really stress, there's a lot of confusion often. People say, oh, I've already done this. This is an evolving project. Each time we come out is completely different information that we're asking for your thoughts on. And I don't want you to miss an opportunity, and a year down the road, you say, wait a minute, I didn't know anything about that. Make sure you keep attending so you can continue to have a voice. Then the other thing I want to suggest is watch parties. And I know you're thinking, what on earth is that? So we all have different groups of providers or staff that we come together with. So I'd encourage you at one of your staff meetings or starting points group or in service days or whatever you might have for opportunities to come together, use one of the videos off the YouTube page. They're 4 to 5 minutes long, as an opportunity to start a discussion about what you all think about this work. You can also use the recording of Professional Development 1 from the summer and use that as a launch for a watch party. We are recording this session tonight, and we did the other 2 last week. So we'll be putting that recording out for you. We're also going to be working on another 20-minute video that kind of summarizes key points of this coming up. So be sure that you take advantage of those and really talk to your colleagues about this. If they weren't here tonight, make sure to tell them, hey, they're going to do another one in December. They're going to do some more in January. Get signed up so you have a seat at that table.